Welcome to Inside the Collective, where we dig into the thinking behind how people work. A quick note before we get started, this is one of our origin sessions. 6 early conversations recorded when the show was still finding its shape. It's grown since then, but the thinking in these still holds up. If you want, jump to Season 1, Episode 1, or stick around for this origin session. Production's a little rougher, but the conversation's worth it. Let's get started. Welcome to Inside the Collective, the show where we connect with people who are not just shaping their industries, but reimagining how we live and work together. Today's guest is Patrick Carr. Patrick went from Oxford to Bain and Company into the world of filmmaking, where he's produced some of the most ambitious international projects to come out of China. Through Mandarin Films, he's worked with Netflix, National Geographic, BBC, and Amazon, developing bold new stories for the big 5 streamers. And this year he's joined Care Collective as a partner, helping shape the future of distributed creativity. Patrick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here too.
We're going to warm up by doing a little rapid fire. So
Okay.
don't give this much thought.
Oh, no, that's
Simple this or that.
okay.
Beijing or Bangkok?
Bangkok.
Documentary or drama?
Documentary all the way.
Oxford Library or film set hustle?
Or film set hustle.
Strategy deck or storyboards?
Ooh. Strategy deck.
Shooting at dawn or shooting at dusk?
Ooh, they're not easy, these ones. Okay. Gotta love the sunset. Yes, I think that's better for cocktails.
Netflix binge or cinema experience?
Netflix binge.
Editing room or on location?
On location.
Pets or kids on set?
What, pets or kids? Oh, neither are good. Oh, that's a really hard one. Kids just.
I'll take it. Awesome. Thanks for playing along. I love to just.
That was good.
You
really put me on the spot there. I thought they were going to be easier than that.
Well, I want to make it a little bit challenging to get things going. Awesome. I want to start off by looking at some of your past work. So
Yes.
Let's start by going back to 2006 when you launched Mandarin Films and quickly found yourself at the center of some groundbreaking projects in China. What was it like being a foreign producer at that moment in time when so much was opening up creatively, but they were still full of barriers?
Yes. I mean, I think I often talk to friends and, old collaborators, partners about that period as being the golden period of China. I'd studied Chinese. I studied at Oxford from 96 to 2000. And then I went into sort of the corporate world a little bit, but found my way back to China and started my company around that time, 2006. And China was, having, when I decided to study Chinese in 1995, 96, I got a lot of kind of blank expressions and, people could not understand why the hell I'd want to, study this language and go to this place that was so kind of cut off from the rest of the world and seemed so alien and lacking in opportunity. And as I was studying, I think China started to come out of its shell, started to come out of its, long period of isolationism. And by the time 2006 came around, it was sort of very buzzy, actually. And 2008, the Beijing Olympics was just around the corner. So it felt super exciting to be there. There were a lot of sort of Westerners, Western companies, Western ideas pouring into China and getting to know China. And the Chinese were also sort of very excited and welcoming to Westerners. And so it was a real sort of heady mix of opportunity. there's a lot of get rich quick kind of people there, but there were also, you know, people who thought deeply about, the the implications if China really did become a superpower, and were anxious to sort of get in at the ground floor. So yeah, there was a real buzz about the time there, and it was super exciting to be making programs there. And actually there was a lot of interest. So people were taking whatever you could give them at that point, which was super exciting.
So, which project from that early era really shifted how you thought about storytelling in China?
So I mean, we did quite a few things at that time with the BBC. We did a show called China School, which was sounds a bit boring, but it was actually an observational documentary, quite a big one. I think 8 parts, 8 times hour, and it was shown fairly prime timey in the UK, and we felt really proud of it because it was something. There's always been this issue with China that it gets a bad press, as people, sometimes deservedly, but I think not always deservedly. And I think tended to be in those times that the only things people knew about China were the three T's, which was Tibet, Tiananmen, and Taiwan. And that was as sort of far as it went. And me having spent a lot of time in China during my studies, I felt that China had so much more to offer the world, and the world had so much more to understand about China. And I think through this series, China School, it really did open people's eyes to what life was like in China, how these young people lived and loved and were in families and had many of the same ambitions that they did, how hardworking the teachers were, and what an interesting place it was, I think. And it was beautiful as well. We shot in a wonderful part of China for actually we were there for a year. So yeah, I love that. A really seminal part of my filmmaking kind of background and upbringing, and I learned a lot, and that will always stay with me. And I think that was a beautiful time in the relationship between China and the rest of the world, because it was just a sort of getting to know you, slightly naive time.
Feels like you were able to bring some humanity behind the headlines of just those three kind of.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's what I've always hoped to do with all the projects that we've been making over the years at Mandarin Film, which is the company I made. Not trying to take a side, not trying to bang a drum for one side or the other, but just to show, like you said, Brad, show the humanity, show the shared values, show the wonderful things about China that people maybe haven't heard about and didn't know about, and might therefore think slightly differently, rather than thinking so black and white about the sort of geopolitics of the whole thing.
You've been behind works like Before the Flood, Skyladder, The Earth One Amazing Day. If we stripped away the logos and broadcasters,
Yeah.
what do you think made those projects stand out?
They're all a bit different. So I'll just run very quickly through the three of them, and then maybe try and pull out some similarities or what drew them together. So Before the Flood was a Leonardo DiCaprio documentary, which would become, I think, the most watched National Geographic documentary ever. And he was trying to draw people's attention to climate change and some of the solutions, as well as the problems of climate change, not particularly helped by him flying around the world in his own private jet with his huge entourage. But that aside, obviously China was a huge part of that, still is. And I think he was coming to China to try to show some of the stories for better and worse. For a long time, China was viewed, and still is, as part of the problem. I think we're all part of the problem. but people didn't really focus on the fact that China was also part of the solution, and probably a disproportionately large part of the solution. And what was happening then in China and still going on now is really incredible, and still doesn't get the sort of attention it deserves, really. Anyway, that's Before the Flood, which was a sort of feature-length documentary. Then we did One Amazing Day, which was a natural history story of one day in the life of the world. And I think interesting that I think in the past China wouldn't have got much of a mention in that kind of show. There are more flashy and beautiful, amazing kind of places around the world to film natural history. But I think because of China's importance, geopolitically, but also in this kind of in the sort of environmental conversation, it was much more a much larger part of the show. And I think also at that time, China's box office was about to overtake the US box office in value. And the BBC, actually their natural history shows are very popular in China, and they saw an opportunity to do a Chinese version, and we got Jackie Chan to do the narration, and it became the sort of, I think it was the second biggest grossing documentary ever in China, and it was the first international co-production between China and an international partner, in this case the BBC. So I think that was a big deal, and that's why we did that. And what was the third one you mentioned? What was the third?
Sky
Ladder. So Sky Ladder, that's a Netflix feature doc. Tsai Guo-chang, well, I don't know how famous he is outside China. I think he's still quite famous, but he does these art installations, artworks with fireworks, often outside, huge kind of amazing, beautiful I guess some art pieces using fireworks. And we did a story on him. He was very up and coming in the art world, and China was taking the art world by storm at that time. I think that's why Netflix probably commissioned it. And amazing story of this guy from quite a poor part of China who became, one of the biggest artists in the world. So I think probably what draws all those together is really sort of the West's kind of growing interest in China, and the desire to, know more about China and understand more about China. And, that's something, 3 projects I'm super proud to have been a part of.
Appreciate those insights. Let's fast forward a bit in more recent years, around the time you were starting 24/7 Pictures, right in the middle of a huge shift, right? Streamers racing to invest in Asian originals.
Yep.
When you're pitching or shaping content for Netflix or Disney, what do you think they're really buying? Is it authenticity, scale, local nuance, global crossover appeal? What's driving it home for them?
I don't know whether I should give you the cynical answer or the ideal.
Look, it's called Inside the Collective, so we're done.
I mean, it can be very frustrating pitching projects to commissioners, because often they can't see the value of something until it's been made, and until people have seen the show. I mean, it's understandable, they get pitched so many projects, and when something's a little bit further out there, or it's people, the creatives have a vision, but it's also their job to sort of try to articulate and show that vision to a commissioner who increasingly is all about targets. Is all about eyeballs on the screen, and having content that works with their different brand partners and fits within kind of the boxes that they have to tick. So sorry if that sounds cynical, but that's the sort of product of, I guess, 20 years of pitching to commissioners, not just at streamers but elsewhere as well. And I think in my career I've seen so many changes in the industry. I came in when TV was really king, and content was king. And if you had great content, then you had quite a few different options of getting stuff onto TV. Advertising revenues were good, and they could they were sort of crying out for content that they could get onto screen and rev up their advertising revenue. So that was really an interesting time. I came probably towards the end of that real golden period, and also at the same time there were big national broadcasters who weren't so worried about the bottom line and could take some risks and show projects that they felt were of national interest or were of interest for an audience that they felt the audience should be watching rather than necessarily wanted to watch. So those were that was what I came in, and then the streaming world sort of came and swept that all away, and it was more about the kind of algorithms and about kind of what audience they were aiming for and whether they could get the content and the kind of lineup of programming that would attract that audience. But that's also been through a lot of different phases. So it went from probably more global projects with more global appeal to much more hyper local projects these days, where you're really just going after your audience in that country, and also even just that sort of subset of kind of middle class audience who can afford the subscription and who are the sort of biggest viewers of that type of content. And now we're in the world of TikTok and YouTube and and even AI now. So things have become more and more splintered. Content creators everywhere. Everyone's a content creator, including my kids. They love to tell me how many more views they get than my shows. And and
that must be humbling.
Yeah. No, it's actually great to have two kids who are consuming media, well, in the ways that kids consume media these days, because it's a real eye opener and as you say, probably a humbling experience every day to see what they're watching versus what we're making. There's a larger and larger disconnect, I'd say. So that's where we're at now, and that's what's keeps us all on our toes, and that's why it's very exciting, but also quite scary, and we're all trying to figure out what's next. And just as you're figuring out what's next, it's already moved on another five steps. So
Down to dinner and the table's been reset completely. Well, it leads me to another question around, where do you see creative gaps, and what do you wish more of the big platforms invested in to make projects really sing or stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that commissioners are too sorry to kick the boot in,
it's all good.
but they're too timid. They have amazingly huge budgets, and the world is their oyster, really, and they're just really kicking out the same old content, safe content. They'd rather do a 100 million show with a big name talent rather than sort of 10 really amazing original shows, one of which might be the next big thing. I mean, I recently saw, I don't know if you saw Adolescence, the UK drama, and I felt that that's something that streamers should be doing way more of. I was actually just last night was flicking through the I have all of the streamers on my TV, and flicking through, and I literally couldn't find a series that I wanted to watch, having seen Adolescence. I was like, that's something really amazing. It's quite rare, and it shouldn't be as rare as that, so I think there's gaps there. I think there is amazingly huge creative talent in our industry. Makes me sad when we make the same old stuff. Netflix Thailand stopped doing any unscripted projects about 3 or 4 years ago, and doesn't have any plans to do any in the future. I think that's a real shame, and I think it's also a mistake. I think people do want a variety of things on their streaming service, otherwise it's all just becomes the same old stuff. So I'd say there's a couple of things that stand out for me, and I think if you really do want to, these streamers also have a responsibility for the next, nurturing the next generation of talent and filmmakers, and just to keep on going back to the same old guys and the safe options feels quite cowardly.
It's interesting, right? I feel like a lot of the people that, the circles that we run in, everybody has every streaming service, but spends as much time trying to find something to watch as watching.
Yeah.
So recently you joined Carrot Collective, which is obviously why we've got you here. And the idea of fully distributed creative collection feels a little bit different, kind of storytelling and an experiment in that. What excites you about this model compared to traditional production structures?
I mean, I think everyone needs all the help they can get these days. Our industry, the media, film, TV, advertising industry, has really just been knocked sideways and upside down with AI, and I think it's just the start. That's not going anywhere, and it's only going to get more disruptive rather than less. But I do believe that it's important for the leaders of the industry to lead this new paradigm and this new way of working in AI, and to bring the values that we've nurtured and our experience to bear on this new amazing technology. So I think it's really interesting for me with Carrot Collective, because it takes me out of my little silo, probably, of my industry, and it puts me together with others from lots of different other industries, but who are maybe experiencing similar disruptions their own, and together you can kind of find new solutions that are kind of in keeping with our new disrupted world.
Thinking about splitting your time between Beijing and Bangkok, you've built this career at the crossroads of sort of East and West. How has living between cultures shaped the way you approach creativity?
I love living. I don't even feel that I live abroad anymore. I don't feel that English, although obviously kept the accents, but I've lived abroad longer than I've lived in the UK now. So I love the ability to work with lots of different nationalities. I feel like Bangkok is going through a real moment right now, in my industry, but also in many industries. I think Bangkok is really having a moment of quite a lot of kind of young and creative and very talented people coming together and creating and doing special things and creating special things here. So that makes me super excited. I think Bangkok's a huge melting pot, and I fit right in there. My kids are sort of mixed race, mixed cultures, and I love being here, and it really energizes me. And I think it's also it feels like the right place to be, and it feels like um, the world is only going in that direction. So it's important, skill set for my kids as well, to just feel international, feel like what happens across the world actually is affects them too, but also that they have the kind of ability to affect that back, and to bring change, not just locally, but to be a part of a global community. And that's what the Carrot Collective feels like too. So that aligns very nicely for me.
So you are segueing perfect into each next question. It's like you read my questions.
I didn't
So
get the
what-
questions right.
No, I appreciate how you just laying them. I love it. So
Okay,
when
great.
you look back one day, what do you want people to say about how you've helped shift? How you've helped shift in how Asian stories are told on a world stage?
Okay, I mean, in today's modern age, it's a little bit of a touchy subject, I'd say, that one, because I'm clearly not Asian, and I think I agree that that Asian stories should be told, by local people, as much as possible. Having said that, I'm also, very international, and I think there is room for bringing international expertise and international perspectives to projects to help them shine, or to bring them reach, or to to help them well, in many different ways. So my goal was always to sort of be building these bridges between well, originally it was between China and the and the West, and I think it will continue to be that way, just to continue to build bridges between Asia and the West, to continue to um um create new opportunities and partnerships globally. And for example, I'm just in the process of hopefully bringing a really big international conference, which has the absolute best of the best sort of broadcasters and commissioners and producers and directors from around the world, and hoping to bring them here to Bangkok next year. Which I think is so important to to keep that sort of international networking and collaboration going. And then also there's a strong emphasis on giving local filmmakers a lift, a helping hand, mentoring, and bringing more and more of the younger generation you might not have had the opportunity to do it, bringing them into that international global conversation. So that's what I'd love to keep doing. I hope if I look back on my career, I can say I helped in some very, very small parts. It goes up and down, when you look back at your career. Sometimes you feel proud, sometimes you feel like you could have done more, sometimes you wonder if it was all worth it, but yeah,
I mean,
it's been a fun ride for sure.
I mean, it feels like just the very nature that you are thinking about it in that way means that you are making a difference.
I hope so.
I want to roll to our traditional closing question, just so I'm respectful of your time. What would you do if you were not afraid?
I probably start a YouTube channel. Yeah, maybe learn some juggling skill, or I don't know, like I don't know, yeah, it's something like that. I think I sometimes I still think I'm sort of in my 20s, and so still think I can sort of do anything, and everything's sort of stretching out ahead of me. And sometimes I have to realize that, that's maybe more for the young kids. That's the next generation. That's for them to do. And my role is to, guide or help where I can, facilitate where I can, but leave it to the next generation. So I guess something around AI, social media, just throwing myself fully into that.
Well, you let us know if you do start that juggling YouTube channel.
Yes, I will. Okay, well, maybe that's the next installment.
Yeah. So these conversations, like the one we've had with Patrick tonight, are about helping us work together. So, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you see things. And we are all very excited to see what you do next, YouTube juggling or conference or whatever it may be. Thank you so much for your time.
I've enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.